Hello and welcome to the Cheese Room podcast on this Wednesday evening. I am your host for this evening. Apparently I was okay last week on my first host and I've been asked back again, which I am delighted about. But thankfully I have got two super helpers with me tonight. We've first of all got our resident Cheese Room student. James, how's your week been? Been up to anything fun?
It's been all right. Had a couple of exams, went to the pub, went to work, so nothing interesting, normal student stuff. Thanks for having me on. Lovely to be here as ever.
You look very relaxed there, leaning back with your feet up and your red wine. I'm quite jealous. Lovely. And I'm also delighted to welcome back Matt after his super debut last Wednesday. How are you, Matt? How's your week been?
Thanks for having me back on, first of all. Loved it last week. Not really done a lot. Watched a couple of stinking England games, which sort of like dampened the football mood a bit. But happy to be back talking all things Spurs and got a few new names to talk about. So let's get into it.
We have. Okay, so before we get going, a couple of housekeeping bits. If you could sign in for us, everybody, and hit the like button, that would be amazing. We'd really, really appreciate that. Hello to everyone in chat and everyone watching wherever you are. I can see already a few people, a few patrons. I can see girls there and callers in the chat. Hi, Holly. A few people already. Super. So we're going to be talking transfers, rumour transfers, possible signings, any other Spursy bits as well. So the first place we have to start is that, according to sort of as many people as we can, we've got Ali Gold, we've got Gary Jacobs, Paul O'Keefe, they all seem to have confirmed that we are going to be signing Yves Bissouma for around 26 million, and apparently he's got his medical tomorrow. There were rumours on Sunday that there was a mystery player that was going to be coming to Hotspur way. I saw this on Twitter and it was saying that he was going to be there on Sunday and it was all a bit hush-hush, and then it apparently got cancelled. So, James, I'll start with you. What do we make of Bissouma? There seems to be a lot of excitement about this.
So, right, I'm a bit conflicted actually. So, I was quite excited when I started doing some research for this lovely discussion. I started looking around at his stats, and do you know what? I'm actually maybe not quite as convinced as I was beforehand. The only exceptional thing he seemingly does is he does a lot of progressive carries, so that's taking the ball and dribbling forward sort of thing. He does that a lot, which we haven't really had since Ndombele. Soko could kind of do it, but he had like the first touch of an elephant, so he's definitely a lot better than Harry Winks, so it's good. I mean, for 20 million, 25 million, like that's a very good piece of business. So I think it's definitely good because it gives us squad depth, but I still think we need a creative midfielder.
26 million, Matt. It's a bargain, surely.
Yeah, I think it's great business. I think he's coming to the end of his contract, but I don't tend to look at too many stats. Just usually look at it by the good old-fashioned eye test, and I think he's a really good player. I think like you bring him in, and with him, Skip, Højbjerg, and Bentancur, you've got like a really good 4 central midfielders, and if we switch, they can play in a 3. But I think he's really good. I think he does progress the ball well, but he's quite solid as well, and he's solid and dynamic. He sort of like breaks the play up, and his short and long passing seems pretty good. So I think it's a really good addition. I think we've got him for like a really good deal. I agree with James. I think if you say for instance you get him and another sort of attacking midfielder, we might talk about a couple later on, then that gives you so many more options in the middle of midfield. When the 2 games we played at home, the first one where we were beating them in the FA Cup, it was him in the second half who started to take the game back to Spurs for them to try and get into it. So it seems like he's got a bit of fight and a bit of desire. Like I saw in the comments there, he is Prem proven, and I think he's a really good player. I think he'll be a great addition for us. And for 25 million, obviously it'll probably go up with some add-ons and stuff like that, but I think that's a fantastic piece of business and a really good signing as well. So I'm made up with that. I think that's a good signing.
Yeah, I think, hi Kerry in the chat. Kerry was saying, there's going to be no sort of side to side sort of stuff. He is quite progressive. He's keen to challenge, isn't he, and get the ball back, which, Hojbjerg does that and Bentancur does that a little bit. So it's just, finally we feel like we seem to have some sort of strength in depth. And if we are going to add any other midfielders as well, I can't remember for such a long time so many people positive about a signing. It was almost like every single person was saying there must be a catch. Why is he so cheap? What's going on? Like you said, he's Premier League experience. It's a great step up for him. Where's the catch? Regarding anything that may be going on in the background, I'm pretty sure that Spurs will have done their due diligence. We're not going to go into the ins and outs of that now, but they're not going to sign somebody possibly for a 5-6 year contract with that going on.
5 year, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's obviously going to be something. Levy's not daft; he's not going to do that. But yeah, I think it's a really lovely, positive thing to hear. And the other thing as well is that possibly Winks may be going in the other direction. I've read that quite a bit in the last couple of days as well. And I think, what do we think about that, James? Winks to Brighton, is that a good move for him?
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I defended him more so than other people in group chats, but no, he needs to move on. To Brighton, sure, they press a lot, so that would make his stats look a lot better than they actually are, right? Because if you play in a pressing team, you get more interceptions, you get more pressures than you would in, say, a team that doesn't press quite so much. I don't know, right? I mean, I think that's probably his level, mid-table sort of thing. I'm sure he'd be decent for them. His progressive passing is, well, he used to be quite good. Now, not so much. But that's surely a confidence thing, right? Like, players don't forget how to play football. It's a confidence thing. So if Potter can bring back his confidence, then I can see him being quite a good player for them, actually.
Yeah, I think so. We were talking possibly about Southampton as well, and those kind of teams that, Winks is quite settled in England. We talked about if he's going to Everton and that sort of club as well. He's not going to be going abroad, let's face it. He's not too horrendous that he should be in the Championship. So those sort of mid-table sort of teams, I think, will suit him. Matt, what do you think about Winksy?
I don't think he'd get in at Brighton. I don't think he'd get in at Brighton. I think he might just get in the Everton team. Obviously, if he's at a club where he's actually wanted and he gets a bit of confidence, he might change. But I'm not sure he'd get in at Brighton. I don't think he's good enough. I think he's regressed so far that I think toward bottom half of the Premier League, or if he can get a move to Spain or somewhere, it might suit him a bit better. But I'm not sure he'd get in at Brighton. I mean, obviously, Bissouma's come to us, so that will lessen their numbers. But I thought when I watched a bit of them towards the end of the season, and they had the other guy who scored against Arsenal, and he looked streets ahead of Winks. But hopefully, well, I think he'll be gone, won't he? So wherever he goes. I'm not really that bothered, to be honest.
Kevin makes a good point there. Arsenal really felt that he was going to them and that he had chosen them, and that of the 2-3 teams that he was going to go to, Arsenal is who he was going to pick. And the fact that they are so salty about it, I think, shows what a decent signing is. As those of you that know, if you follow me, I often ask Jack, and he was like, "Oh yeah, no, Bissouma's a really good player," and so I thought actually that he's my kind of benchmark, and I thought but the fact that Arsenal are so upset about it is just, again, it's just fantastic. The kind of abomination since the North London derby and the kind of way that they are reacting to every little thing is just hilarious, and it's making the summer go so lovely and quick. It's just fab. Right. Okay. Yeah. Super. So hopefully medical tomorrow. Maybe by tomorrow evening we see a picture of him in the shirt. We're hopeful. Alistair Gold has said that he's having this medical. I think until we see him holding up a shirt or wearing a shirt, yes. But I think this one, barring a disaster, is in the is all.
Yeah, we're nearly there, aren't we? Nearly there.
I think so. Yeah. Right. But so we're not kind of eating into this war chest much, are we? This 150 million that we're supposed to have. If we move on to thinking about Jed Spence, that seemed to be all sort of really close. And then again, Alistair Gold has said today that he's possibly coming over now that the under-21s have finished. And for anyone who didn't know about it, on Monday, Jed Spence scored an own goal in 55 seconds for under-21s in their defeat. So he's already full on Spurs, and I've seen it as well. It's like a back header. It's quite a good own goal as well. It's quite funny. But yeah, so he's 20 million. Indications. Matt, what do you think about Jed Spence?
Well, it is a lot of money for somebody who's not Premier League proven. But then I think that's the sort of price you pay now for sort of like good young English talent, even if they're sort of coming up from the Championship. It's, relative. 20 million's not a massive amount now. But I think if he comes, I don't think we'll end up paying that. I think it'll be less than that. Probably loads of add-ons because he's so young.
Yeah.
I understand. I watch Monday Night Show and I can understand people sort of saying it. They don't get excited about it, but I don't think we'd buy him if Conte wasn't sort of in on him, because Conte's win now, isn't he? He's not going to want him to come in and sort of like send him out on loan. I think if he comes, I think he's going to get games, and hopefully if he does come in, Conte Conte's improved players at Tottenham already who are older and sort of a bit more longer and stuff and a bit more set in their way. So hopefully you can get hold of somebody like Spence. Like I said last week, I think I'd like to see Spence come in. I'd like to see Emerson go, and let's get someone else. I think the idea, the dream is Hakimi, isn't it? But there's no way that's going to happen. But I'm not really up to date on loads of right wing backs, so I don't know who else is out there who we could sort of get who could come in and play. So just hopefully they make the decision that suits Paratici and Conte, and hopefully it'll work. That's all. I don't think there's a lot more I can say on that, really.
We'll come on to the England game and the Wales game a little bit later on. Yeah, James, anything more to add to that about Spence? I think we've kind of said quite a bit of this already, haven't we? It seems it's one of those ones we've heard about for such a long time. Again, it seems inevitable. It's going to happen.
Look, I agree with Caller. I don't know if I like it or not, but it's happening. He's got as many yellow cards as he does assists last season. You know what I mean? In the Championship, I don't know if he's ready. Is he another Ryan Sessegnon? At least he had like the experience of Fulham, right? Spence doesn't. I don't know. Like, if he's going to be playing second fiddle to Doherty, right? Learning. If Conte's looked to him and thought, give me a year of him, I can get a real player. I can see that progressing, but at the moment, he's not a Champions League quality player, is he? We don't even know if he's a Premier League quality player.
Yeah.
No.
Maybe he can kick on and improve, but it's happening, so hopefully it works. If it doesn't work, it's 20 million. So
yeah, and I think the one good thing about it happening now is that he will get a full pre-season, won't he? So
yeah.
I think people like the conclusions are drawn that he's a good player because he had some really good games against Premier League opposition in the FA Cup, didn't he? Obviously, there's more to it than that, but I think that's where sort of like people are saying he's a really good player because of his performances against the Premier League teams in the FA Cup. But like I said, I think it's happening, so it's got to sort of try and get behind it, haven't you?
Yeah, Seb's put that in the chat there about Conte doesn't tend to buy players and then sort of want to see a change. He wants them to be good straight away. So you would assume that he has seen something that allows that to be the case. Because sorry, Becky, sorry.
Right.
Go on.
And like I said before, like I know what they're saying about people are saying about him, but backing Conte is getting him the players he wants. It's not like going and spending 50 million. If he wants a right wing back who is 20 million and a young English kid from the Championship, then that's the player to get him.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Because like we'll say later on about the Nations League, his performances in the under-21 are not really a kind of marker. Everyone's tired at the end of the season, but yeah, certainly. People I know that watch a lot of the Championship said he has played good teams, he has played good games, and he's performed well. But it's that step up, and it's how quickly he can step up. And like you said, the Champions League element of it. But it's good that we've got this. Yeah, it's good that we've got this kind of pressure for places, which we've never had, and it's just such a lovely thing to have this early on. We Dyer, the improvements that he's made and the improvements that Davis has made, and Sanchez did well when he came in, and all those sort of, if Spence gets a full pre-season, then it's great. I think also we have the kind of idea that if things don't work out, he can be loaned, can't he? Forest might have him back. He could go back to Middlesbrough.
Probably retain his value, won't he?
Yeah, there's other clubs I think that could have him. So that's super. So again, we'll look forward to hearing more about that. So let's move on. So Eriksen, one of my faves. It seems to be another one that from day to day it seems to change. This morning we had the Højbjerg and Eriksen were holding up the women's shirts that they wore. I think, was it last night or the night before? Which I think is fantastic to be playing in the women's shirts, and loads of people have kind of photoshopped Eriksen holding a Spurs shirt and this sort of thing. Now that the Nation League matches are finally over, we'll talk a bit about those in a bit. Hopefully he's gone away with his family, and then maybe we start to hear more about things when he comes back. Matt, what do we think about Eriksen? Do we think it's going cold, or are we still hopeful?
Well, I sort of read before we came in here that he's away now on holiday, and he's going to make his decision while he's away. And there's sort of like Brentford, us, and Man United are the teams spoken about. But I think I've got a feeling it will happen. I mean, if he wants games all the time, he's going to Brentford or maybe Man United. Man United have got Fernandes, haven't they? And they sort of, I think they take up the same sort of role. I'm not sure if you'd play them both in the same team, but for me, he knows the club. He's got experience in the Champions League, experience in the Premier League, and undeniably, he makes the squad better. He does make the squad better. We're going to need depth, and like I said, on Monday night's YouTube, I know there are a few people saying, "Oh, would he come in instead of Kulusevski?" Well, probably not. You wouldn't drop Kulusevski for Eriksen, maybe, but we need options. We need options to change personnel. We need options to change formations. We got like massive games. We got lots of games. And what we need to do is protect. We can't run players into the ground like Kane and Son and Kulusevski and some of the midfielders. We need to rotate them. But when we rotate, we don't just want to be putting a player in who plays in their position. We want to be playing quality players in those positions. And he's a quality player. No matter what, anybody says, he's quality, and he's shown that this season, hasn't he? And how well he fitted into Brentford so quickly, and for Brentford,
kept them up, didn't he? James, how long do you think if he does come, he'll sign for? Do you think it will be short term, long term?
Yeah, possibly at this stage of his career, it won't be a mega long term. I can see 2 years sort of thing, max length. That seems like the sweet spot, because with a 1 year deal, you're in January, you're kind of worrying about it again. Whereas at least with 2 years, if the season is sorted, problem for 18 months time sort of thing, Eriksen, fantastic player, world class, still is world class. We go right in our team. I've seen reports that he wants to stay living in London.
Yeah.
So we are the natural team for him to go to. Why would you turn down Spurs to go to Manchester United? Because contrary to what Sky Sports commentators might think, this is not the 2000s anymore, and we're better than United, and we have a better manager. I like Ten Hag, right? But Conte is the better manager. Eriksen's worked with Conte before, and this is a system that would allow him to play Champions League football, right? Which, towards the end of his career, coming back to a club where he's played for a number of years, he obviously likes the club, playing under a manager he knows, playing with people who I presume he's friends with, right? He stayed at Spurs for a number of years in the Champions League. I mean, why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you do that? And you can stay living in London, his family in London. Seems like a win-win for everyone, right?
He'd get 30 games this season, wouldn't he? If he signs for Spurs, we've got a deeper squad with injuries, there's a World Cup on, we're going to have to rotate. We're in, obviously League Cup, FA Cup, Champions League, Premier League. He'll get 30 plus games, plus his international games. So
Seb makes a really good point. So Seb makes a really good point in the chat that we've obviously got to rotate. You know, we can't have this situation where we are flogging Kane and Son, and
No.
you know, we have this option that we can, and you know, the kind of strength in depth hopefully is there, provided there's no injuries or you know injuries that aren't long term.
Yeah.
That you know, and also the 5 subs. We've talked before about the 5 subs element. You know, I know when we've had this conversation about Bale and Kulusevski, and they're saying, well, Bale wouldn't start in front of Kulusevski, but he doesn't necessarily have to. I think with 5 subs, it is almost like having 2 teams.
We're in 4 competitions, aren't we? And 2 of those are elite competitions, like the Premier League and the Champions League. That you know we're going to need good players to come in.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and those 24 games in the first 13 weeks, I think, are all leading up to the World Cup, aren't they? And then you know, so it's mega full on, and there'll be internationals before that as well. I'm like you, James. I've said this before. Things have changed. I know Davo's saying there that he did leave, but things were different then, and you know there was kind of a cloud around the club, and you know you'd like to hope that he's spoken to Højbjerg about it. He's spoken to other people. You know, Kulusevski has come out this week and said something, hasn't he? There's something along the lines of I had a chat with him and I knew him before, and he's a great guy. And you know, the thing for me is that if he was going to come, why hasn't he just come out and said it and got on with it? It always worries me when we have this situation where it does sort of ramble on. And I know we're only five days into the transfer window. But, you know, when things kind of ramble on, it's like they had us with Barcelona and you're like, oh, and then they don't come. You know, if they're really that keen, it hopefully would be done quickly. And that's the only thing that's nagging at me and thinking, well, if he wants to come back, he knows how much he's loved. Why hasn't he just said so? That's the only thing.
He's pretty calm, isn't he? I don't think he panics, or I think he's probably more or less knows what he's going to do. He's done wherever he goes, he's on a free. He'll probably just go on holiday, make his decision there, come back. Let's get on with it.
I hope so. I really hope so. Yeah, Caller's right. He didn't dislike the club. He wanted a different challenge, and we completely get that. And you know, and
it's his job.
Yeah, and we're in the Champions League
job,
now, and yeah. Man United for me just seems like a very, very strange thing. Like we just said, why would he move him up there? They're not in the Champions League. No, either, you know, like you were saying, Sky are trying to kind of continue this, aren't they? And they're saying, oh, he doesn't want Champions League. He doesn't matter. But if he said that he does, then he isn't going to go to United. But yeah, I just wish, you know, I'm getting a bit impatient with the whole Eriksen thing. I just wish we could kind of find out. But hopefully, fingers crossed. I just, you know, I don't see a negative to him coming back. I can't see one at all. You know, he's shown his fitness. He's shown, you know, I've seen people read, well, we'll be able to keep up with Conte's training methods. Well, he did before. And, you know, so
nothing against Harvey White. He's a young kid trying to find his way. But on the bench, Harvey White or Eriksen. No brainer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ooh, difficult dilemma, that.
Yeah. And he's a free. It's on a free as well. So it's not complicated, is it? Anyway.
No.
But yeah, so we kind of alluded to it before. You know, if Eriksen does or doesn't come back, if you know our midfield is going to be Bentancur, Højbjerg, Perisic in the kind of range of positions that he seems to be targeted at playing, Skip and Bissouma. You know, that kind of competition for places is going to be mega. Hopefully. So right. Next, the other signing that we seem to have made this week, which is kind of still not official, because we haven't seen him holding up anything, but Josh Keeley, the Irish under-21 keeper. We mentioned it briefly on Monday's show, but it seems to be tied up now. So I had to Google him, have to be honest. Didn't know much about him. He's 19, and friend of the show, Paddy Hartnett, has sort of said that he's a good shot stopper. He can play with his feet, which, you know, we play out from the back now, don't we? You know, so that hopefully something that he can kind of do. And, you know, the rumours are that he's apparently as good as Kelleher for Liverpool, and I've heard of him. So what do we think about that? And obviously he's not going to be straight in the team because we've got Forster and we've got Lloris, but, you know, there seems to be quite a lot of noise around him. Matt, do you know anything about him?
No, I ain't got a clue. But, you know, young kid coming in, he's going to be learning off Lloris and Forster. You know, Lloris is one of the best in the business. Forster's been around. He's a young kid. Kelleher, second choice at Liverpool. but seems fairly competent. And I think he's been at a few games for Liverpool, and he's looked pretty steady. So if he's already seemed to be better than him, then good signing. Hopefully he can be a future number one. I mean, it is quite difficult to know if he will be till he starts playing games. But yeah, hopefully he'll come in. Hopefully it'll work for him.
Because we got rid of quite a few keepers, didn't we? There was kind of like a cull of keepers. I know the sort of the in the academy there were keepers. Anything further to add, James, or not?
He's been playing professional football for about a year, since like last July, right? In the Irish division. I don't know. What it says to me is that there's kind of a lack of faith in our youth product in goal from Conte and Paratici. Now, look, end of the day, if we can get this guy young and he's better, yeah, that's what I would do in Football Manager. But I look at our training facilities and everything, and I go, why aren't we producing someone who's good enough to be third choice keeper behind Foster and Hugo? There's something in my head that isn't working there. But I haven't watched him play because weirdly, and I apologise to anyone who may be offended by this, I do not watch the Irish Premier League.
No,
but if Paratici has signed him, he's probably decent enough to be third choice. So hope it works out. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Okay, it seems like a good kind of segue there to think about the England game and talk about goalkeepers and the England game. Those of you that watched it or was aware of it, it was 4-0 at home at Molineux against Hungary. And it was
stinking, wasn't it?
It was a hard watch. Yeah, it was a hard watch. It was not much happening. And then, the kind of keeper situation, I've seen so many pictures on Twitter today of Ramsdale, and there's one where he's got his eyes closed and there's like Zeds coming out of his head. And, those of you that follow me on Twitter will see I put on it. Jack was watching it with me, and Jack plays in goal, and he was all over it. And I thought, I've already trained him well. He knows he plays for Arsenal, and he was properly laying into him. But also from a keeping point of view, it's like, you don't do that. He's in the wrong position. Why hasn't he come out? It was, and I've read already people saying that, Forster will be higher up the pecking order for the World Cup than Ramsdale. It was calamitous. But obviously, as Spurs fans, that side of it is also hilarious as well. But yeah, Matt, what do we think about England's prospects kind of going forward?
Wow, they're not really at it, are they? I mean, I think Southgate said these games were to prepare for the World Cup, and I think he probably goes away now knowing less than what he did before. I mean, I don't think. I put this in the Patreon last night. I don't think Southgate's ever been a really good manager. What you've got to take your hat off for him is the last two tournaments, and probably when he came in, what he's been brilliant at is he's united a group of players. And I think the public have seen that, and I think the public have got behind the team.
And the country, United
the country,
definitely need the country.
He's got everybody behind him. And I used to love going. I used to go and watch England. I was in the England fans, and I used to follow them. But and then I sort of lost it for a bit, and then we did sort of got a bit behind him a bit more. But he is just so. When it comes to the big games, when it comes to the crunch, he'll always be found wanting because he's so cautious. And it's just frustrating to watch. I mean, he's not going to get sacked, and he probably doesn't deserve to get sacked because, up till now, he has done a good job. But it's just not. It's not exhilarating to watch, is it? I used to enjoy watching England. I mean, I like watching. I always want them to win. I hope we win the World Cup, but. I watched all that game last night, and I'll never get that 90 minutes back.
See, I was lucky I didn't see the Saturday game, the 0-0, because I was in Blackpool, but watched all of last night. And yeah, people are saying about Southgate out, and it was like Nuno all over again. And I tweeted last night that it was fairly audible. You could hear in the second half when he made the substitution, and he brought Maguire on for Saka, wasn't it? I think. And you could hear, you don't know what you're doing. And it was very much Nuno against the Man United game. And it was this sort of idea that you've lost it now. You've lost the support of the crowd. Poch Poch for England manager, James? You're Welsh. What's your view on that?
No. Poch deserves a real job. But I would love to be England manager, and I will tell you why. And this is not the wine talking. You get paid a lot, right, to basically go around England and watch football games and then do a bad job of managing your team. Right, look. I can be unbiased and unreactionary with this, right? Which maybe some people who are more so England fans than me can't. Contrary to my jokes and massive Welsh flag, I do want England to do well. The only game I ever don't want them to do well in is when they play Wales. Every other game I want them to win. So my observation, my more unbiased observation than perhaps some others, is that England don't really have a coherent identity, right? Which is probably something anyone in England can tell you who watched the game. But, you know, when I watch Wales, I can see 11 players who give absolutely everything and adore playing for their country. And they try so hard, like average players like Joe Allen, who just turns into a man possessed, right? I never see that for England. And I've never seen that for England at all. Like even when I was, you know, young, right? But I've always seen that for Wales whenever I've been watching them. And I don't really know what Southgate wants to do with this England team. I've always seen him as quite pragmatic because he's thought, right, in tournaments, don't concede and you can win games 1-0. That's how you win tournaments, right? And he's done quite well at that. But I look at this game, 4-0 against Hungary in England. I mean, 1-0 away, loss, whatever, right? Tough place to go. Hungary are a decent side, actually, right? Let's not take that away from them. But 4-0 at home, that's just not good enough. The midfield, was it Phillips, Bellingham, and Gallagher? I look at that and I think, all right, that's interesting. But they just couldn't create anything. They had so much of the ball, they couldn't create anything. And I only watched this game, you know, I flipped in and out because I was watching the Wales game, but I don't know, man. Like, there's just something.
I think he's lost his way a bit.
Yeah,
I think he's lost his way a bit with it. I think he was on the right path, and I tried to change. I don't know what's happened, because I know what you're saying, that but that they didn't have they didn't have any identity. But I think for a little bit they sort of did, like what you're saying about getting. I think that was their identity: keep hold of the ball, control the game, nick a goal, and then we'll go from there. But he just seems to have lost his way a bit, and maybe he's been given, but like things like where he said, he's been known to say, I'm going to pick players on form, and then he doesn't. I mean, I'm not Dyer's biggest fan. He's been fantastic this year, and there's no way that he shouldn't have been in that England squad. And Harry Maguire's been dreadful, and so it's just little things like that, and I just think he's lost his way a little bit. But you know, it is what it is. They're not going to get rid of him.
Dyer's been watching that on holiday and having the best holiday ever. You know how he wasn't picked for that side. Yeah. Okay, right. So we'll park England, I think, for a bit.
Yes, please.
But speaking of Dyer and Davis, you know, there were reports that they're going to be offered contract extensions, which I think, you know, we probably all agree, panel, that they've deserved that. You know, for how they've shown. Don't get me wrong. Before Davo comments, we do want upgrades and we do want improvements. However, I do think Davis and Dyer, you know, have earned contract extensions, just as long as it isn't like, you know, 6-year, 10-year contract extensions. That's probably a bit much. And then, you know, hopefully following on from that is Kane. But we may use that for a different day. There's a lot of people in the chat asking about Richarlison. And it's quite funny reading it all because no one seems to be able to spell his name. And I would include myself in that, because when I was writing the run sheet yesterday, I couldn't do it and I had to Google it because it was just too hard. So yeah, reading all of the different spellings is quite funny. Where do we stand with Richarlison? I'll give my view afterwards. But James, what do we think about the possibility of signing Richarlison for 70 million? Is it, or 60 million or something?
It's going to be a big figure because they stayed up, right? Had they got relegated, it'd be like 35, 40 million. Right. One thing I will say is that on FM 2018, he always used to score against me, which really annoyed me and made me so annoyed that I signed him just so he couldn't bloody score against me with Watford. Right. This happens so often that I signed him. Right. Okay. Rant over. I don't know. Right. Like, is he better than Rafinha from Leeds? I don't know about that. I think he's a good player, right? And I'm not saying he's a bad player. Statistically, he's pretty decent dribbles, creates chances, decent finisher, right? Like, I don't think he's a bad player. But I look at that figure, 70 million, I think, crikey, that's a lot of money. Who could we get for that? And I think Rafinha, I see a bit more of a player in there. Do you know, I even look at Brennan Johnson from Nottingham Forest, and I think maybe there's more of a player in there. I mean, he's not going to want to leave, right? But I look at that and I think if we were to throw 50, 60 million at Nottingham Forest, they might take it, right? And that's the kind of figure we're talking for a Richarlison. So for that amount of money, I think there's better value to be had in the market. So I'd have to say no. If we could get him for 30, 40 million, I'd say probably yes. But anything over 50 is like, we're talking silly money, right?
Yeah, and Everton are in need of the money, aren't they, as well? Which I think is just why there's these numbers bandied about. I would be personally disappointed if we had 150 million of it and 70 went of it on Richarlison. That would seem to me like a strange kind of deal. But if it is including other players, as Steve has said there, I think that would make more sense. We talked briefly before about Winks, didn't we? And obviously there's add-ons and bits and pieces for Delhi. Matt, where do you stand with Richarlison or Rafinha for that matter?
There is no way we will sign Richarlison for 70 million. No way. Not for that amount of money. I'm not saying we won't sign him, but it will be nowhere near that figure. I can't stand him. I'm not saying he's a bad player. I just, whenever I watch him, I just find myself sort of like shouting at the telly, and I just think he's an arsehole.
But is that because he's not playing for us though? With that, I've read that a lot on Twitter. They're like, he's annoying and he's frustrating. But is that because he's not playing for us?
Yeah, but on when the news came out, and I thought, oh God, I don't want this bloke. I started trying to justify it to myself, and I thought what I can see is that I think personally that they can see he could probably play left of the attacking three, right of the attacking three, or he could play down the middle if needs be. This is what I'm trying to justify it to myself. I'm not saying we should sign him to do that, and I think there are better options out there, probably far less expensive than that. But looking at it from that sort of point of view, that's what I think. That's what I think the thing with Richarlison is he can cover those three roles, one player to cover three roles, and it gives you a bit more depth. And he's not a terrible player. He is okay, to be fair. I mean, it's just I don't like him, and if he came, I'd have to sort of get my head around it. But there's no way we sign him for that money. Maybe a few players in there to bring the fee down, but there's not a chance we'll sign him for 70 million.
Yeah, I agree. I think same as you, really. When I kind of heard of it, I was sort of, he's somebody I've heard of, which is a good start. But yeah, no, and imagine if he signed that kind of first conversation with Romero is going to be quite tasty, isn't it? I'd like to be on the fly in the wall for that.
It sort of makes sense, doesn't it? The signing makes sense when you look at it like that.
But they played, didn't they? South Korea played Brazil last week, and there was that picture where he had, Richarlison was in the picture, and I'd, heard rumours that he was saying, where am I up to with signing with Spurs? And I think that's another thing that's kind of fueled it. But if I'll try to love him if he comes to Spurs. I think it will be harder to love him than it will be for other players. But I think if he does it on the pitch, it gets booked quite a lot as well, which is slightly a concern. But yeah, I think he's prem proven. He is a bit of a utility player. I think there are lots of different positions that we can put him in, which I think similar to Perisic, if that's what Conte wants as well. I think that's really great because that gives us that kind of option in different positions. We talked before about Eriksen and the 5 subs, and Matt said about all the competitions that we're in, and he's an international player as well. So yes, there are lots of positives, and maybe all the shithousery will be fine when he plays for us, and that will be fine. But yeah, certainly when he plays against us, he does annoy me a bit. But anyway.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. Can I just have a bit of a bone to pick here with this notion of a proven Premier League player, right? Because I really hate this, and sorry, this is a bit of a personal thing. Was Diego Costa Premier League proven when he joined Chelsea and scored lots of goals? No. It's not about whether a player has played in the league before. It's about whether they have the profile, right? That's as simple as. Just because he's Premier League proven doesn't mean he'd actually be good for us. What's he done in Premier League proven? Got relegated with Watford, then sold for 50 million, right? And then struggled to stay up with Everton. Premier League proven. I don't know, right? Like,
I have to say I agree with that. I think it's that when they say, you know, there's lots of other things. It's, you know, coaching and physicality and, you know, lifestyle and fitness. It is more than just Premier proven. I think I would prefer players to be homegrown as a reason to buy them than them being Premier proven. But I sort of see that as well. Pukki, you know, it's interesting, isn't it? He goes down with Norwich, plays with Norwich, comes back with Norwich, comes back up. You know, would he ever want to move on or, you know, stay at a Premier League club?
I think he sort of just like plays up front, doesn't he? I've got a feeling from what I'm seeing that we're looking for someone who's just a little bit more flexible, who can play in a few different positions along the front line. Like we were talking, I think Rafinha's a really good player.
I agree.
I'll probably talk about Bergwijn later, but Bergwijn's off, and I think if you brought Rafinha in, but where does he play for? Does he mainly can he play either side, or does he mainly play on the? He's left-footed, isn't he? Rafinha, is he a left footer?
He's a Marco Bielsa player. He can play anywhere on the pitch. You can stick him at right back and he'd do a job, right?
Yeah,
he can play either side.
But so that's what about straight through the middle? Because whatever we're talking about here, at some point we've got to rest Kane, haven't we? Or he may get injured. So like we don't just we can do a job up front, but really we want somebody who can do a proper job up front if it gets to that.
So, I mean, to be honest with you, for Leeds, like Dan James was playing, and I'm Welsh, and I don't think Dan James should start for Wales, right? I love him, but he's Brennan Johnson's a much better player. He should sign Spurs. I don't think he's a striker. In which case, we probably shouldn't go for him.
Richarlison's more of a striker, isn't he, Jay? If you were going to play one of the two,
So I take your point. If we're going to sign a player who can play up front and out wide, Richarlison seems the better player. Yeah. I think on raw talent, Rafinha's the better player.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah,
it comes down to what we need, right? If Conte says, I want a guy who can play up front, left and right, Richarlison's the better option. But I think Rafinha is the better winger, if that makes sense.
Silent Dave there. Hello, welcome to your Patreon. He's put, you know, Richarlison's stats are terrible. Like I said on Monday, I watched the game against South Korea, and he just spent most of the game on the floor. But then, you know, he did score some important goals for Everton. But again, it's at Everton in a season where they had a really, really poor season, and he didn't hugely stand out for them. So, you know, maybe if he's with better players and he's going to Conte and he's got a full pre-season and all these sort of things we've said for all the other players coming in, then maybe it will be a good thing. I'm not sold on it yet.
No. Let's hope. If it happens, you've got to get behind it. But let's hope it doesn't come to that.
Yeah. Let's talk now about more kind of further afield players and kind of centre back and left centre back positions. Bremer. Now, we were talking to him about him on Monday, saying that he's Torino player, isn't he?
Yeah.
And that possibly he wants to stay in Italy to get his citizenship so that he can play for them. What do you think about Bremer, James? What do you know?
Well, what do I think about Bremer? Look, I'm going to be honest. I haven't watched a ton of Bremer, right? Because I still hold on to the opinion that Facundo Medina would make a great centre-back for us. That's my opinion. Because his stats are actually better than Bastoni's in basically every aspect. The only thing he's worse at is the amount of times he's been dribbled past, right? But do you know what? Like, we're looking at various options at centre-back as opposed to Bastoni. And it's, you know, he plays for Torino. It's another Italian option. He's big. He's 6'2". It gives us someone else to aim for. If Bastoni isn't keen on us, don't sign him. I don't want a player who doesn't want to come here. I want a player that wants to come to Spurs, work under Conte.
Yeah, I agree.
And challenge for titles. I mean, why wouldn't you want to come under why wouldn't you want to come to Spurs to play under Conte? If you don't want to come to Spurs to play under Conte, then I think you're a clown, basically. Unless you're at City or Liverpool or Real Madrid, come to Spurs, right? I think he's pretty decent from the stats I've seen of his. He looks better than what we have at the moment. But he's not Bastoni. He doesn't have the sexy name, if you will. But I think he'd be pretty solid. So, I would be happy if it happened. But Ben Davies is Maldini, so no, don't take away Ben Davies. He's the best player in the world.
Daddy Davis, yeah. Any more to add to that, Matt? I must admit, I know very little about Bremer, so I'll be sitting here.
I know very little. Only the same sort of thing when we get linked to a player on YouTube, watching a bit. So he looks. I'm not sure on the ball, but he looks quite aggressive, and he looks quite like he's on the front foot. So a bit like Romero. Obviously, we're sort of looking on the left-hand side, aren't we? And I don't know how Torino plays 3 at the back. I don't know if he plays the left side of a back 2 or back 3, whatever he plays. So it's one of them. If they decide to go with it, we'll see, won't we? I don't watch a lot of Italian football, to be honest. So, and I'm not sure if he's better or worse than any of the other options we're apparently looking at. So.
Well, Guardiola keeps getting mentioned, doesn't he? He's the Leipzig player. I know HG has talked a lot about him and saying that he's a strong candidate. I don't know much more about that and about him. But
he doesn't really want to leave either, does he?
Pardon?
They're saying he doesn't really want to leave Red Bull either. He's not. He's not massively desperate to get away. He's a young kid, isn't he? He's 19, is he?
Right. Okay.
So he's got time on his side, hasn't he? But money talks, I suppose.
The thing with someone playing, I don't know, right? Because he's only 20, so. Does he want to make a move to England from Germany? A whole new culture, a whole new language. It's difficult, right? And in Leipzig, it's quite a set-in-stone system. It's very pressing orientated. Even as a centre-back, he's left-footed. I don't know. He's been on loan at Dynamo Zagreb. Is he ready to come to Spurs and start ahead of Davies, right? I don't think so yet. I mean, in a couple of years, yes, maybe. But
the thing is about signing players like that is I just see it as another hill. Is that they come across? I know we were lucky with Kulusevski, but for somebody when they're that young, it's a big change. It's change of city and change of all of that, and whether when they're that young, how that impacts on them as well. And it's always helpful if they've got people they've played internationals with, or they've got people that they've played alongside in different teams. Which is, I must admit, why I'm surprised there aren't as many Juventus links. As I thought there would be, because that's a factor, isn't it? Kind of having people that you've got somebody. We've talked before about Galini, and Galini's main role at Spurs seems to have been as kind of social secretary, because he never played any games. His role was looking after everybody, and that I love that, and that's brilliant. But players when they're young, how does that kind of affect those players? And we just don't know that, do they, until they come? That's the big risk.
Yeah. He's a young lad, isn't he? He's at a well-run club. He's doing well. He's improving. He knows, because of how Leipzig run, he'll get if he continues to improve, he will get his move, and it'll probably be likelihood is if he carries on the path, he'll probably end up at Bayern Munich, where he sort of wins everything. So he might not be in any great rush to leave. So that's how I see that one.
Yeah, I agree. While we're talking about Juve rejects, because we've had 2 fantastic ones. I was Gimme came on in the car today, and I must admit added a bit of a sing. And I've seen that lovely tweet as well that someone gave Kulusevski the Gimme flag last night when he played for Sweden, and he signed it, and he's holding it up, and he just looks so happy, and I love that. But yeah, Weston McKennie. I didn't realise he was American, I have to say. But my little bit of Googling yesterday. Is that possibly, I don't know they don't play in the same position, but it could be possibly a swap for Reggie. James, do you know anything about that?
I don't know if he'd be a swap for Reggie, right? Because he seems more like a central player from what I've seen. Although, admittedly, my knowledge of him is based mostly on Football Manager. But I don't know, right? Like, I think he's played out wide as like a wide midfielder before. So perhaps I don't know. I'm not convinced on him, if I'm honest. I think he would be a decent asset for us as a midfielder, actually. The one thing I will say about him is he's very versatile, which is useful in any squad that has to play a lot of games, because I'm sure against Morecambe in the League Cup, you could stick him as a bloody fullback and he'd do a job, right? So he wouldn't be the worst signing ever, and if Juve don't want him, we could probably get him quite cheap, right? I mean, Paratici's obviously got information on the people who run Juventus, which means he gets good deals on all their players. So,
like we said, if we're looking for players that can play in lots of positions, and that's what he apparently can do as well. That seems to be kind of the way we're looking at recruitment, I think.
Gaza 85. Don't think we're going to quite get De Ligt in. I would love De Ligt, but I don't think that's quite who we're going to get in, unfortunately. But yeah, I think he'd be all right. I hadn't read a lot about him. I know bits and pieces about him. He's pretty versatile, but yeah, he'd be a decent signing. But again, one for the future, right? Which seems to be a common theme with our scouting at the moment, which I think is actually very positive, because it looks like we're building a team for the long term, not just for the next couple of years.
Yeah. Kerry makes a good point as well about we've had Americans in the past. Did Dempsey play for us? Didn't he? Dempsey played for us.
Dempsey, yeah.
But we've come into the World Cup. You know, maybe he's coming over here to get some. You know, just if he's coming to see what it's like playing for it before they play America. I must admit, I'm quite worried now about the World Cup. I was thinking England are going to smash the group and Wales will come second, and now I'm not so sure. But you know, that's for another day.
The Welsh takeover is happening.
Okay, yeah. So we put it up on the screen, but yeah, if you can smash the likes for us, please, that would be fantastic. And yeah, another thing I need to mention, and we'll come up to it later, is fixtures are out tomorrow. Put in the comments who you think or who you would like Spurs to play. I think people possibly have seen the leaks and everyone will write the same thing. But, you know, if it's not that, put who you would like to have first game of the season. And I always think, put who you think you'd like to have as first away game of the season as well. And we'll come through some of those later on. Okay, so other players, ins and outs. Sarr, who would be, I'd assume, due back after a holiday, some sort of time. What do we think with him? I said before possibly that, you know, maybe he, with the kind of Bissouma from Brighton thing, Winks, but would possibly Sarr go to Brighton as well? Is that something that they possibly would be looking into? I must admit, I don't know a lot about Sarr apart from the fact that he seems to have been on loan for ages, and we bought him and loaned him back.
Yeah.
Matt, anything else about that?
Yeah, I think, imagine he'll come in, start pre-season, maybe go on that tour they're going so they can have a look at him. And then if they think he needs to go out, they'll probably send him out on loan, won't they? Because he's obviously, if you class him in the same position as Bissouma and Højbjerg, and that he's probably fifth. Well, even with if Winks is still there, he's probably behind Winks, isn't he? If everything stayed as it was. So, but I should imagine he'll have a look at him and give him some games and see what he thinks. If he thinks he's going to be an addition to the squad, you know, he's going to be valuable to the squad, he'll probably keep him, but I'm not 100% sure. He went back to, it was Metz, wasn't it, he was at, and I think he went back there and played quite a few games, but they got relegated, I think. So, but, you know, everything you hear about him is quite positive. I think he's quite highly thought
wasn't he added into some top 100?
Yeah, like the young players.
Yeah, it wasn't called that. It was like yeah, that's right. I'd read that today and I was like, it's interesting. So that's a positive thing, isn't it?
Yeah. He played. He went to the African Cup of Nations, so I tried to keep an eye out, but I don't think he played too much in that. So you know, a bit of an unknown quantity, really. I think there'll be a few people who know a bit more about him, but I think it's a case of getting him in, let Conte have a look at him and see what he thinks, and go from there.
Which I think, James, would you agree that would be the same for Hill, that he would come back and Conte would just sort of go and see what works for him.
Yeah, Hill has really struggled in Spain, actually, on his loan spell, so I'm not entirely convinced. I think what they both need is a loan in the Championship, much like what Skip had. Hopefully, what it will do is it'll either toughen them up or it will show they're not really they're not really able to adapt to the
sink or swim, isn't it?
Physicality of the Premier League. I know last time I said that, someone said, "Oh, what about David Silva?" Yeah, okay, cool. Well, we're not playing tiki-taka football, and ultimately, do you know what? We beat them multiple times because we had a physical midfield. Being able to toughen up and be a physical player does still help you in football. But yeah, I'd agree. I mean, he's got like 7 caps for his country, so, and he didn't really play for Senegal that much. I think there's definitely a player that in there for us. I mean, he played 18 times last season, so he's obviously played quite a lot of fixtures, right? So I don't know, right? Like, I don't watch the French league very much. I watch the Premier League and a bit of the Spanish league and a bit of the German league. But yeah, if he's playing, they obviously rate him in France enough to start him, right? So there's obviously a player in there somewhere. But I don't know, man. So give it another year and we'll see.
I think it's similar to what you said, isn't it? It's difficult, like you said, about players in the German league and players in the French league. I know we talked before about Premier ready, but we really lucked out with Kulusevski and Bentancur and coming straight in and slotting in so quickly in the Premier League, and also with the amount of games that they played as well. It is always going to be a risk taking somebody, I think, from the French league or the German league, because it's not the same. The pace of the Premier League and all of that is just it's not the same. But yeah, I think like I keep saying, because we're getting all these sort of signings, all these possible signings done early or thinking about early, is that Conte has opportunity to see them.
There's a degree of risk about every player, isn't there, though, Becky? Like we say, like what James was saying about Prem Proven. We signed Doherty. Prem Proven meant to be one of the best right wing backs in the Premier League. Yeah, he did improve towards the end of the season, but how many times he played for Spurs? 60 times, and I bet you he's had 8, 9 really good games. It doesn't mean anything, does it? Prem Proven. If they're good enough, if the manager wants them and he can use them in the positions that he wants to use them in, then they'll be all right, won't they? If they don't, they don't. So there's just a degree of risk and probably a little bit of luck that they'll just bed in with every sort of signing.
Yeah. Okay. So Bergwijn, we touched on Bergwijn slightly before. I saw an interview or something earlier in the week when he played, and he said that similar to the question that Bale was asked, and he said something along the lines of, "Yeah, I've got loads of offers." I think similar to Eriksen, he's gone on holiday and he's kind of thinking about it and going from there. James, what do we think about Bergwijn and possibilities about where he will go?
Good player. Obviously isn't going to get that many minutes under Conte, or hasn't towards the end of the season. Maybe that'll be different next season with Champions League football. It seems like he obviously wants to go. I think he's creating trouble for himself with that post of, dirty supercar or whatever. Yeah. Conte won't be having any of that. He'll be sipping his glass of red wine and thinking, no, this isn't how you talk to me.
I agree.
Very talented, annoyingly talented, but I wonder how much his mentality is there. A bit like in Ndombele. I really want him to stay at Spurs and for it to work because I like him. I like the way he plays. There's a player in there, right? But if
do you think he will though? Has he not had enough chances in Ndombele?
Oh no, sorry, not in Ndombele. I mean Bergwijn.
Oh, okay.
No, Ndombele can leave. He pissed me off on my 19th birthday, so no. Leave Spurs and never come back, please. You annoyed me on my birthday, so never come back. I
agree with you with Bergwijn. There is a player in there, and he's done very well in the Nations League. And in a Nations League where possibly maybe apart from Denmark, a lot of teams have sort of been quite inconsistent. Bergwijn's been quite consistent, hasn't he, all the way through?
Definitely.
So there is a player in there, but we've said this before, Matt. He hasn't been getting minutes, and there must be a reason for that under Conte.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Conte doesn't really fancy him, does he? He hasn't had a lot of minutes. I I like him. If he stayed, I wouldn't be against it. But like, I think he wants out, doesn't he? And it's hard. If he wants out and Conte's not that keen on him, I think you've got to try and just get the best deal you can and move on. It's a shame because I think he is a good player. I think Lucas will stay. We won't get into it, but I think he's better than Lucas. I think he's younger, and I think there's more to come from him. But it's once players start saying they want out and stuff like that, and especially with someone like Conte, like James said, Conte's not going to have that. He's going to get even less time, and he'll just be literally shunned, won't he? He just won't play him. He just won't play him if he falls out with him as well. So hopefully they can get something done. I think I'm pretty confident that something will happen there. Whether he goes back to Ajax or I think he probably wants to go back to Ajax. I don't think he'd fancy going to Everton. I think he's Dutch. He's been playing well for the Dutch national team. Ajax pretty much win it every season, don't they? So he's probably I think he was at Ajax as a youngster as well. So probably just wants to go back. Just get it done. If he wants out and we don't want to keep him, let's move him on. Get the best possible deal. Unfortunately, you've just got to do that sometimes.
I think also the problem is that if things for that kind of ramble on as well, and then we don't find anyone for him, he then comes back not necessarily happy. If he, like you said, if he wants to go, just get it sorted. The longer it kind of drags on, he then returns to Spurs, and yes, there is a player in there, and we've talked already about 5 subs and more matches and all that sort of thing. But in a season, this season where we didn't have strength in depth, he wasn't utilised enough, and I just think that there must be a reason there, and that's probably never going to change.
The sooner we move him on, the sooner we can move on, can't we? And I don't think Conte necessarily. It's weird because he played him in a few, and he did play him in a few games, but he used to bring Lucas on before him, so he must just see a very specific role from it at a certain time, and it's not enough for Bergwijn, is it? He's a young guy, decent player, wants to be playing all the time at the highest level he can. So I can understand it from his point of view, really.
And he's got the World Cup, hasn't he?
Yeah, he wants to be playing in the World Cup. That's not the way to go about it. How he's been saying it, but I think he's on his way out anyway. So
yeah, I agree. Kind of Rodon, we sort of mentioned him briefly on Monday. There was a lot of kind of around the idea that he might go on loan. Forest was mentioned. And then I think I said last week, he's played a lot. He played a lot for the Nations League and then the World Cup match. And it's that sort of, idea, is he happy? Bale came out, didn't he, and say that, he's deserved his time at Spurs, similar sort of ilk to the kind of Bergwijn sort of thing, really. But I haven't heard much about Rodon, really. James, have you heard anything more than that, really?
No, not really. If you want my opinion on Rodon, I think he's a very good defender, and he definitely deserves to start at Spurs. More of a start, really. But he's not an Antonio Conte player, is he? Right? Like, he's not ready-made. He's not Champions League quality. Even though my Welsh bias speaks through, I think there's definitely a defender in there. But how good is he on the ball? Not brilliant. He's a very good reactive defender in a sense of players running at him. Good he's good at blocking and tackling, but that's not necessarily what the player Conte is looking for. I'd like to see him go out on loan to somewhere like Swansea or Cardiff, preferably Cardiff, because I'm a Cardiff boy. But I think he needs a loan, right? He obviously wasn't the player Jose wanted when we signed him, so I think it's harsh to sell him, but give him a loan. If we still don't see a player in a year's time, sell him on. We can make some money. Worst case, we can probably recoup some of that fee we paid. Best case, we maybe make a bit of money off it. But yeah, I think he needs a loan, really.
Yeah, I think a loan is good for him. I agree. He's like you said with Bergwijn. He's got the World Cup coming up. He'll want to feel ready for that and not be sort of sitting on the bench. So he'll want minutes as well. But he finished, like I said, the kind of Nations League matches, he was solid for, but then maybe solid isn't enough anymore, and we need to kind of think above that. Like I said before about Davis and Dyer, great seasons, but we want an upgrade on our defence, don't we? So yeah, okay. Lots of people put in their proposed fixtures in the chat. My personal one, I would like first away game to be Villa. I think Villa as an away game is a great atmosphere, particularly in August when it's nice and warm. And first home game for me would be something like Brentford or something like that. Something not too complicated. I saw a rumoured fixture list earlier in the week saying that we had Liverpool, Man United and Chelsea consecutive matches in September. I hope that's not right because that's horrific.
Bring it on.
Yeah, God. But Matt, who would you like? Who would you be your favoured home and aways first?
Well, Villa's literally down the road from me, and people.
Because you're Evesham, aren't you? In Worcestershire?
Yeah, Evesham, Worcestershire. My wife, when we got married, I was a season ticket holder at Spurs. She was a season ticket holder at Villa. So were all her family. So it's like quite a big rivalry. It's not far to get to. Most of my friends support Villa. So, and there's good ground, good atmosphere. That'd be a good first game of the season as long as we beat them. And first home game, like I think on it, get Chelsea, get them in, let's beat them. We're due a win against them. Let's get them in. Let's have the crowd up for it like we were against Man City first home game of the season. I was there for that game. You just felt we were going to get, what I mean? The crowd were like buzzing. If we can get Chelsea at home, stuff them, brilliant.
The cynic in me always thinks
Liverpool or Chelsea.
The cynic in me always thinks that kind of Sky have some input on the first weekend fixtures because we had City last year, didn't we? When Kane wasn't supposed to be playing, or he was going to be playing for City, and then 100%. Chelsea would be that sort of idea that Conte's back. He's got his team, he's got a stronger team, he's picked, and will that change? So that would be interesting if that was a good shout.
Oh, they love that, wouldn't they?
They really would. James, what about you? First home and away?
Tricky that, because part of me says City away because we'd win, right? Because City are some small team who we always manage to beat. We're like their bogey team. Genuinely, we always beat them. Ever since Guardiola's called us the Harry Kane team, we've beaten them numerous times without Harry Kane, be it the Champions League or this season. Look, if Nuno Espirito Santo tactically outclasses you, I think that's when it's time to quit football. North London derby away. I'd love us to go to Woolwich and just batter them under Conte. We did it at Spurs, absolutely dominant. We're going to strengthen in the window. I'd love first game of the season to go to Arsenal and just batter them and say, you belong in the Europa League. We're a serious team. Mind the gap. First home game, I'd like someone who I think we will probably beat just to build up some of that momentum. Like
Man City.
Man City. I mean, easy 3 points, right? Like we couldn't do it twice against Burnley last season, who got relegated, but we could do it against City. So I would like to see Arsenal away. Do you know what? City at home. Because if we win those two games, what's that? That's a statement. That's a statement that we're out, not just for top four. We're there to try and win the league.
Yeah,
you've got to play them all, haven't you? At some point,
exactly.
Let's go for
it. My husband always says that, and I'm like, but it's the order. The order that the matches do come in does make a difference, and I am very cynical and don't think that it's the computer algorithm, and obviously I'd love to be on the fly on the wall and on the organising of it. I think it'd be brilliant because in London certain fixtures can't happen at the same time because of the transport network, and obviously Arsenal and Tottenham and Liverpool, Everton, and how they kind of work it out. It's the mind boggles, but I do think the franchises that put a lot of money into it will have a say, and there is some sort of weighting, isn't there, that certain teams can't play each other in the last game of the season as well, and that's based on the season before. So I think it's all fascinating, but I just think you do play them all, but the order that you play them does have a say. And like I just said, if we have United, Chelsea, and City, wherever I said 3 consecutive games in September. Wow. Imagine if we won all of those.
I'd love to play Liverpool early doors and beat them. I'd love to shut them up early doors, get right into them. I can't stick them.
Silent Dave there. Hello, shout out to you. You make a good point. There is an agenda against Spurs, and I totally. They don't want us to win, and hopefully we can, have a big say in that this year. A lot of people have got a lot of love for Forest. Obviously, having Forest back in the Premier League and playing them, that's a good ground as well. City ground. great ground to go to. Leeds away is always another good one, isn't it? You know, there's rumours that we're going to be playing, I think it's Southampton on the Friday night. Whether that turns out to be the case tomorrow morning when the fixtures are out, we will see. One last thing to ask. Hello to anybody whose Spurs kits have arrived. I know a lot of people who bought them on the first day last week. They've started to kind of appear. So hope you're enjoying your Spurs kits. Still very quiet on the away kit and the third kits. So we look forward to those whenever they appear. But yeah, it's an exciting time to be a Spurs fan. And, you know, we'll continue to kind of speculate. And, you know, that Tottenham feed put something out today. And I think he put this morning something along the lines of A, B or C. Which is it going to be? Is it going to be signings get done, we get some unheard ofs, or some players leave that we want to leave? And I replied with, can we have all of those, please? All of those things, that would be fantastic, because that shows that things are still going on. And I know people have gone on holiday and things now, so it might kind of quieten again. But, you know, things are positive and we've got lots of things hopefully to look forward to. So before I go, please, if you haven't already, can you hit the like button for us and subscribe to the channel? Thank you to everybody who's been watching and who's been in the chat today. It's been lovely kind of interacting with you again. And thanks so much to my panel for your help tonight, chatting all things Spurs. James, thanks again for your help behind the scenes and clicking the buttons and enjoying your red wine. Have a good week.
Thank you very much. You're welcome. And I'd love to be on as ever to talk about Spurs, and for you for putting up with me, basically. And thank you, Matt. You've been brilliant. I know it's only a second show, but you talk like you've done 100, mate. So good job. But honestly, both of you, great job. And thank you everyone for watching. Leave a like.
Thanks, James. That's great. Yeah, I agree. You seem less nervous today, Matt. But yeah, I agree with James.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again. I love it. Yeah.
You'd think you'd been doing this for ages. And even, you know, people who don't know, there were a few tech issues before we started, and Matt sorted them out, and it's been grand. You do genuinely look like you know what you're doing. You've been doing this for a long time. But yeah, hopefully we can have you on lots and lots, because it's great to hear your views on Spurs too.
Thanks for having me on. I mean, I spend most of my time talking about Spurs anyway, so I may as well come on here and try and get my points across. So I love being on here. It's been brilliant. Really enjoyed it. Hopefully I will be asked on again. But I'm really positive about Spurs this year, and I'm sort of like an old cynic, really. I've seen so much mediocrity in my time that I've had enough now. I think Conte's here to win. I don't think he's here for third or fourth, and I think he's here because he wants to be challenging, and that's what I want us to do. So hopefully I can get rid of my old saying, it's the hope that kills you. And I want a bit of expectation. So, yeah, brilliant. Hopefully I'll be on again soon to talk more about Spurs. But thanks for having me on. Thanks for talking me through how to get my phone working earlier to get on here. And hopefully if I come on a bit more, I'll get a little bit more tech savvy. But thanks for looking after me.
I think that Conte's building a title-winning side. You know, the signings and the possible signings and the people we've been linked to are, you know, it's something we're not used to. And I think like you said, we're not used to this, and we're trying to be excited without being too confident. And there's always that kind of that element that kind of pulls us back. But yeah, hopefully,
it's exciting times, isn't it? Because even under Poch, we weren't ever really going to sign. Like we had that time where we thought we were going to get Dybala and Coutinho, and then in the morning we had our chips pissed over. But like now we're actually thinking we're gonna sign someone and we're gonna challenge for some honours. It's exciting times. So let's enjoy it.
Yeah, it is. Right. On that note, let's say goodnight. Thanks, everybody. Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.